Police say 6-year-old Adam Walsh is missing a front tooth. He was last seen wearing a beige canvas hat at the Hollywood Mall. Tonight, members of the Citizens Crimewatch of Hollywood continue to search for young Adam. At one point, a spokesman said 200 people had joined the search. Hollywood police detectives tracked down leads and helped groups out scouring the area. Adam's father, John Walsh, says if the youth was abducted, he was going to negotiate with those involved.
It has been my decision, totally on my own, that I would offer a substantial reward for information resulting in the safe depositing of Adam or return of Adam, and that I would negotiate with the abductors in whatever way they want me to, whatever terms, if they want to leave Adam and still negotiate with me, or negotiate with me and then leave. I don't know the formula. It's my decision.
You're not going to give up hope?
I can't give up hope.
Members of a group driving four-wheel drive vehicles gathered across the street from the police department. They plan to search hard to reach areas. Hollywood police say anyone with information about the missing youth can call tonight at 921-3911. Again, that number is 921-3911. Mel Taylor, Newswatch 10.
It is a Monday afternoon in the summer of 1981. The mall is alive, shoppers brushing past each other, checkout lines humming, the smell of air conditioning cutting through the brutal Florida heat outside. Children are laughing, mothers are browsing. Store clerks are folding, stacking, rearranging. Everything is ordinary. Everything is exactly as it should be. A mother steps away from her 6-year-old son for less than 10 minutes. He is standing at a video game display, surrounded by other children, in the middle of one of the busiest department stores in Hollywood, Florida. She can practically still see him from where she stands. She is close, she is careful, she is a good mother, and she knows it. 10 minutes, that is all she needs. But when she walks back to where she left him, he is not there. The video game is still running, the other children are still playing, the store is still full of people going about their afternoon like nothing has happened. But her son is gone. And nobody, not a single person in that crowded store, saw anything at all. What happens in the next 16 days will break your heart and change America forever. Before we talk about what was lost, we need to talk about what existed. Because this story does not begin with a crime. It begins with a family. John Walsh was not a famous man in the summer of 1981. He was not a television host. He was not an activist. He was not someone whose name you would have known. He was a businessman driven, ambitious, quietly building something meaningful in South Florida. He and his wife Reve had married in 1971, settled in Hollywood, Florida, and together they were constructing what felt like the perfect life. John was deep into developing a $26 million luxury hotel project. The career was thriving. The marriage was solid. The future looked exactly the way they had always planned it. And then there was Adam. Adam Walsh was born on the 14th of November, 1974, the firstborn child of John and Reve, and by every account, the absolute center of their world. He was 6 years old in the summer of 1981. 6 years old, full of life, full of noise, full of the kind of energy that fills a house and makes it feel like a home. He loved baseball. He loved the water. He loved his mother and his father with the uncomplicated, wholehearted devotion that only a young child can give. Those who knew him described Adam as joyful and gentle. He was the kind of boy who lit up a room without even trying. But there was another side to him too, a quieter side. Investigators and family acquaintances would later describe him as timid, a child who might hesitate in an unfamiliar situation, a child who might not speak up when he felt uncomfortable. That detail, that one small, heartbreaking detail about his personality, would matter more than anyone could have ever anticipated. In the summer of 1981, John Walsh told people, "We were so happy. We were building our dream." They had no idea that dream was about to be shattered beyond recognition. The 27th of July 1981 starts like any other summer Monday. The Florida heat is relentless, the kind that sits heavy on your shoulders the moment you step outside. Reve Walsh decides to take Adam along on a shopping trip to the Hollywood Mall. A simple errand. The kind of thing families do 100 times without a second thought. She needs to inquire about a lamp on sale at Sears. Adam tags along the way 6-year-olds do, restless, curious, alive with energy. They enter through the north entrance. The store is busy with the usual afternoon crowd. And then, near the front of the department floor, Something catches Adam's eye. An Atari 2600 video game display. A group of older boys, maybe 8, 9, 10 years old, are huddled around it, taking turns laughing, competing. To a 6-year-old boy in 1981, this is the greatest thing he has ever seen in his life. Adam turns to his mother with that look, the one every parent knows, the please look. Reve hesitates. Then she agrees. She will be just a few aisles away, looking at lamps. She can practically still see him from where she will be standing. It is a busy store, full of people. In the middle of the afternoon, he is surrounded by other children. She will be back in minutes. She turns and walks away. And that is the moment right there that everything changes. When Reve returns, the display is still running. The store is still full, but the group of boys is gone, and so is Adam. She calls his name. Once, twice. She moves through the aisles quickly, her eyes scanning, her voice rising. She has him paged over the public address system, Adam Walsh, please come to customer service. And she keeps searching, kept moving, kept telling herself there is a reasonable explanation. By pure coincidence, she runs into her mother-in-law, Jean, in the store. Together, they search for over 90 minutes. At 1:55 inches the afternoon, Reve makes the call no parent ever wants to make. She calls the police. Now here's where this story takes a turn that will stop you cold. Adam Walsh did not wander off. He was not being reckless. He was not disobedient. What actually happened in that store is far more heartbreaking than a simple disappearance, and it exposes something that every parent watching this needs to hear. While Reve was in the lamp section, a teenage security guard approached the video game display. The older boys had been getting rowdy, too loud, too disruptive, and the guard told them to leave. And Adam, standing among them, did what a timid 6-year-old boy would do in the presence of an authority figure giving an instruction. He followed them out. He did not tell the guard his mother was in the store. He did not go back to find her. He did not stay put, not because he was careless, but because he was 6 years old and too timid to speak up. He did not know he could. He did not know he should. The moment he stepped outside that store, he was alone and a predator was waiting. That is not a failure of love. That is a failure of knowledge. And it is the kind of failure that, as we will see before this story is over, changed what parents across an entire nation teach their children to this day. But first, the next 16 days are about to get much darker. Before we go further, I want you to put yourself in Reve's shoes. You walk back to where you left your child, and he is not there. Drop a comment below. What would you have done in that moment? When a child goes missing, the first 24 hours are everything. Law enforcement will tell you that. Child safety experts will tell you that. The statistics are brutal, and they are clear. The longer a child is missing, the worse the odds become. Every hour that passes is an hour that cannot be recovered. Every hour that passes is an hour that matters more than the last. John and Reve Walsh knew none of this on the evening of the 27th of July, 1981. What they knew was simple. Their son was gone, and they were going to find him. John Walsh was not a man who waited for other people to act. The moment he learned Adam was missing, he moved. The couple launched an immediate, relentless grassroots search, blanketing the local area with flyers, knocking on doors, working phones, pulling every contact they had. They went on television. They appeared on Good Morning America, describing Adam's face, his clothes, the circumstances of his disappearance, begging anyone who had seen anything to come forward.
He's our only child, beautiful little boy, and we just want him back more than anything. We have hope, and we'll never give up hope, and we'll never stop searching.
Strangers writing to say they were praying, searching, holding their breath alongside them. But here is what was happening behind those press conferences and those flyers and that outpouring of public support. The system was failing them. In 1981, there was no national database for missing children. There was no coordinated federal response. There was no infrastructure, none specifically designed to handle a case like this. Local police departments were largely on their own, operating without unified protocols, without resources built for this kind of search. The Hollywood Police Department, despite the efforts of individual officers, was navigating this case in a system that had never been built to handle it. The Walsh family pushed. They pleaded. They did everything in their power to keep the pressure alive and the search moving forward. And still, day after day after day, nothing. 1 week passed, then 2. On the morning of the 10th of August, 1981, 16 days after Adam vanished from that Sears department store, John and Reve Walsh appeared on national television once more. They were still pleading, still holding on, still telling the world their son was out there, that he was coming home, that hope was still alive. They did not know, could not have known, that on that same morning, a detective and a deputy from the Indian River County Sheriff's Office had discovered a severed head in a drainage canal alongside the Florida Turnpike near Vero Beach, almost 130 miles from Hollywood. They did not know, as they sat in front of those cameras and spoke about hope, that the waiting was already over. The remains were identified as Adam's. He had been gone for days before they were found. The coroner ruled the cause of death as asphyxiation. The rest of his body was never recovered. John and Reve Walsh had spent 16 days refusing to give up on a child who had already been taken from them in the cruelest way imaginable. If this story is already making your heart heavy, hit that like button. It costs you nothing, but it helps more people find this story and learn from it. There is a certain kind of grief that destroys people completely. And then there is the kind that John and Reve Walsh chose, the kind that gets up, looks the broken system directly in the eye, and decides to rebuild it from the ground up. Make no mistake, the destruction was real. John Walsh later reflected openly about what the murder of a child does to a family. He spoke about the statistics that 80% of parents who lose a child to murder end up in divorce. The grief is that consuming, the sadness that total. He and Reve fought hard to hold their marriage together, and they succeeded. They went on to have 3 more children, but the version of themselves that existed before the 27th of July 1981 was gone forever. What rose in its place was something that would reshape an entire nation. Fueled by outrage and steadied by purpose, John and Reve Walsh threw themselves into advocacy with the same relentless energy they had poured into the search for their son. They were not politicians. They were not lawyers. They were not lobbyists. They were 2 parents who had been failed by a broken system, and they were not willing to let another family go through what they had endured. In 1982, they pushed federal lawmakers to pass the Missing Children Act legislation that mandated the FBI add missing children's information to its National Crime Information Center database. For the first time in American history, there was a federal mechanism specifically designed to track missing children. That was just the beginning. John and Reve founded the Adam Walsh Outreach Center, which grew into the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, an organization that has handled more than 5 million calls on its toll-free hotline and helped recover more than 426,000 missing children since opening its doors in 1984. In the 1990s, the Code Adam protocol was implemented in malls and stores across America, a direct response to exactly what happened in that Sears department store on the 27th of July, 1981. It became the predecessor to the Amber Alert system, which continues to save children's lives to this day. And on the 27th of July, 2006, exactly 25 years after Adam disappeared, President George W. Bush signed the Adam Walsh Child Protection and Safety Act into law, creating a national database of convicted child sex offenders. One family, one devastating loss, a movement that has protected hundreds of thousands of children who will never know Adam's name, but are safer because he existed. We have walked through the crime. We have witnessed the failure of justice. We have seen what one family built from the rubble of the worst thing imaginable. But before we close this story, I need to speak directly to you. Because this is the part of Adam's story that most people never talk about, and it is the part that could save a life, possibly the life of someone you love. The first lesson starts with that timid 6-year-old boy standing at a video game display. Adam followed those older boys outside because he did not know what to do when an authority figure gave an instruction that separated him from his mother. He did not know he could speak up. He did not know he could say, "Wait, my mom is inside. I need to go back." He did not know that staying put was more important than following along. That is not a character flaw. That is a gap in knowledge, and it is a gap that every parent has the power to close. Teach your children exactly what to do if they are ever separated from you in a public place, not in vague terms. Specifically, tell them, stay where you are. Find a store employee or a security guard in uniform. Do not follow anyone outside. Do not get into anyone's vehicle for any reason. And most importantly, your voice is your most powerful tool. Use it loudly. The second lesson is about the safe stranger conversation. Most children are taught never to talk to strangers, and while the instinct behind that lesson is right, the execution is incomplete. A child who is lost and afraid needs to know who the safe strangers are. A uniformed store employee, a police officer, a mother with children. These are the people a lost child should approach, not freeze in front of, not run from, but actively seek out. Adam was timid. He hesitated when he should have spoken. We cannot change that, but we can make sure the children in our lives never find themselves in that same position of not knowing what to do next. The third lesson belongs to every one of us as a community. When the Walsh family screamed into a broken system and nobody listened fast enough, they did not accept it. They pushed harder. They pushed until the system changed. The lesson there is simple, and it is powerful. Silence in the face of institutional failure is not neutrality. It is permission. If you see something broken in your community, in your school, in the systems designed to protect children, say something. Loudly. Repeatedly. Because John and Reve Walsh prove beyond any doubt that ordinary people, armed with nothing but grief and determination, can change the laws of an entire nation. Adam Walsh was 6 years old. He loved baseball. He loved the water. He loved his mother and his father with everything a 6-year-old heart is capable of holding. He had a laugh that filled a room, a gentleness that made everyone who knew him love him, and an entire future stretched out ahead of him that he never got to live. He was in that store for less than 10 minutes. And in those 10 minutes, the world lost him, but in the years that followed, his family made absolutely certain that the world would never forget him. Every child that has been recovered by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children carries a piece of Adam's legacy. Every parent who has ever heard a Code Adam announcement in a shopping mall and pulled their child closer, that is Adam. Every predator sitting in a national database, every missing child case entered into a federal system, every law passed in the last 4 decades to protect the most vulnerable among us, that is Adam Walsh. 6 years old, gone in 10 minutes. Present in every single one of those lives. His story did not end in that drainage canal in Vero Beach. It is still being written in every child that comes home safe. If you believe these stories deserve to be told, not just for entertainment, but for the lessons they leave behind, subscribe to Crime of Desire. Because every story we tell together is one more life we might protect. Ottis Elwood Toole was not a ghost. He was not a mystery. He was not some shadowy figure that investigators struggled to identify. He was a convicted killer who was already sitting in a prison cell when his name first surfaced in connection with Adam Walsh. And that fact alone should make every single one of us deeply uncomfortable. Toole was arrested in Florida in 1982 for starting a fire that killed a 64-year-old man named George Sonnenberg, locking him inside a boarding house and burning it to the ground. That arrest opened the door to a much darker picture. He was a career criminal, a drifter, and a self-described partner of convicted serial killer Henry Lee Lucas, a man investigators would describe as one of the most dangerous criminal associations in American history. Then, on October 21, 1983, while already imprisoned for 2 unrelated murders, Toole confessed to the 1981 murder of 6-year-old Adam Walsh. For the Walsh family, after 2 years of silence, it felt like the beginning of justice. It was not. Toole's confession was detailed and chilling. He told investigators directly, "I got in my mind I'm going to kidnap the kid, get him in my car, and keep him for myself." He described luring Adam with candy and toys. He described the moment Adam began crying, wanting his mother, wanting to go back to the mall. He described striking the child across the face. And then, in what remains one of the most disturbing accounts in American true crime history, he described pulling over in a rural area and decapitating Adam with a machete. He then drove around with the boy's head for several days before tossing it into a nearby canal. But here is where this case takes a turn that defies belief. Police ultimately lost the blood-stained carpet from Toole's car, the machete said to have been used, and eventually the car itself. The physical evidence that could have put this case beyond any reasonable doubt gone. Inexplicably, unforgivably gone. Toole confessed multiple times beginning in 1983, but was never formally charged before dying in prison. He confessed, he recanted, he confessed again. He played a devastating game with the truth, while the Walsh family waited for a justice system that kept failing them at every single turn. As for judgment, Toole was convicted of 6 murders and received 2 death sentences. Following an appeal, those sentences were commuted to life imprisonment. After his incarceration, he pleaded guilty to 4 more Jacksonville murders in 1991 and received 4 additional life sentences. He would never walk free again. But he was never, not once, formally charged for what he did to Adam Walsh. In September 1996, Toole died in prison of cirrhosis at the age of 49. Before he died, his niece later told John Walsh that Toole had made a deathbed confession admitting one final time, with nothing left to lose, that he had killed Adam Walsh. It was not until December 16, 2008, 27 years after Adam disappeared, that the Hollywood Police Department officially closed the case and named Ottis Toole as the killer. Hollywood Police Chief Chadwick Wagner acknowledged that many crucial errors had been made and apologized to the Walsh family on behalf of the department. 27 years. No formal charge, no conviction, no justice, at least not in any courtroom. The only verdict that ever truly came was this: a broken man dying alone in a prison cell, confessing one last time to a crime the system was never able to formally pin on him.